just hoping that it would help with that.
We're going to get a new one.
I know.
The sisters have worn this one out. Okay, that out of the way. So, you've had quite a journey just from the very beginning here. You're a product of the
I'm a
sisters
product
from
of the
very
Sisters of
beginning.
St. Joseph, I certainly am.
Wow. So,
Kindergarten through second year of college.
And you knew in the second grade.
Second grade. Reverend Mother Anna Maria came over to our classroom at CPS, Cathedral Parish School, and asked us to pray because she was going on a recruiting trip to Ireland, where they would go and get the younger sisters. And she simply said, how many of you are going to be priests? Of course, all the boys raised their hands. How many of you girls are going to be nuns? And I raised my hand and I said, okay, I'll be a nun. And that was the end of that.
So you did. So did you ever have any kind of a second wish or desire or interest?
Yes and no. I mean, I led a normal life. I was very lucky in that my classmates, who knew, of course, because I didn't make it a secret. Well, this was St. Augustine. Everybody knew everybody in those days. They were very supportive of my decision, very supportive. They still are. They're really excited about coming for my 50th Jubilee. But I dated. I went to dances. I did everything. Hung out at Russell's Barbecue. I did everything that a normal teenager would do. And then I entered the convent.
So, that's kind of unique. Tell us about St. Augustine in that time. What was it like? Was it still this?
There were 2 stoplights on all of US 1 from here to past Spinell. Okay. It was very easy to learn to drive at St. Augustine in those days, except you had to parallel park. It was, St. George Street was the main town where you bought all your clothes and everything else. It was idyllic. When we got together for one of our 50th reunions, we all agreed that it was the ideal time to grow up. You didn't lock your doors. Everybody knew that, if you needed anything, you just went and knocked on the door of any house you wanted to. We hopped on our bikes on Saturday morning. We were gone for hours. I don't remember my mother ever worrying about me on that. It was pretty much, the ideal 1950s, going into the early 60s. We hadn't yet discovered any of the, hard temptations of today. That would happen shortly after we graduated from high school. But yeah.
And that sort of during that time, was the community well aware of the sisters and the bigger role that they played even in the state?
Definitely. I'm not so sure about the state, but the convent girls. Since the convent was downtown, and since the school was downtown, and the boarders, the resident students, many of whom came from South America and Central America, they would line up and they would go downtown to spend their money, Woolworths, McCrory's. They would also come to church. The nuns would come, they'd file, in 2 by 2, in their long black habits, special seating in the cathedral. The community was very much aware of them. In fact, getting out and making the new St. Joseph Academy, which is not so new anymore, known to the community is something that we still are trying to do. But everybody knew who the convent girls were because we had on our uniforms. We always wore uniforms to everything. Everything.
So 3 months after high school graduation, you were on your way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what were any challenges for you?
Silence. There was all sorts of different silences that we kept in the novitiate at that time, and there's still a excuse me. There's still a silence that we keep within the convent, but they were much more stricter. I guess some of my challenges were at that time, it was right after the Second Vatican Council, and many of my teachers whom I had idealized were leaving. They were going on, deciding that this is not what they wanted. So for them to leave was a challenge, for me to have to continue to reassess my own vocation.
So at that point, at that moment in time, what was the joy that you found
I knew that this is what God wanted me to do. I mean, I knew it, from my toes to my head. I knew it.
Then you spent some time at the University of Florida.
Yeah, go Gators.
That's great.
Loved it.
So tell us about your time there. And
It was fascinating to go to a state university, fascinating to be in an auditorium of 200 or 300 students, listening to lectures. I had an excellent education there. And with permission from our Reverend Mother at that time, Mother Lewis Edwin, I was able to major in comparative religions, which was fantastic because the rabbis taught the Judaism, and Islamic people taught Islam. The Eastern religions were taught by those that really professed. So it was something that I really enjoyed.
how have you? That's interesting. How have you used that?
Oh, I teach religion. I've been teaching religion as a high school teacher since 1974. So I continue to use that. And at the school I'm at now, St. Joseph Academy, we have quite a few international students, many of whom are from China, Japan, the Orient, with no professed organized religion. So I have an understanding a little bit of their philosophy. We have 2 Islamic students, so they're still very dedicated to their religion, but still very much open to learning about Christianity.
So you can meet them where they are.
I try to, yes.
Okay. And then you did 20 years at Bishop Kenny.
20 years at Bishop Kenny. After 5 years in grade school, kind of moving around the state, I did 20 years at Bishop Kenny as religion teacher, as vice principal. And then I came back to my alma mater.
Way back around.
Yep.
So, that's a pretty unique perspective. What have been some of the things that you can look back on, and similarities? I guess I'm looking for contrast and
Between?
in the work that is done.
Oh, okay.
Is it
Teaching?
teaching? Has it gotten easier, or I'm still looking for the challenges and the easy moments, the joy.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, there's always joy when you're working with kids. I mean,
Okay.
there's always joy when you're working with kids, even in the moments that you'd like to not have them be there right in front of you. There's always a joy there. It kind of is like a rhythm of events. There were times, I think, in the late 70s and early 80s when there was it was very difficult to teach students. They were more rebellious, more taken more with themselves than they were. And then we went into a period of conservatism, I would call it, or where they were pretty languid about listening to you. And then you come back to this balance, and most kids are right there with the balance. That yes, it's an important part of their lives to be a teenager. And yes, they have to focus on themselves to a certain degree. But I think you'll find that most teenagers today are very much outward. They want to do things for people, community service, mission trips. They want to be out there doing something.
That's what I've noticed with this younger generation. They're much more engaged.
I would say that the way in which students have been taught, that they don't necessarily grasp some of the fundamentals that we did. But in this computer technology age, research for them is different than it was for us. I often tell them that for my senior American democracy exam, I literally sat on the floor of the public library, which was right around the corner here, and went through tons and tons of U.S. News and World Reports trying to figure out the history of the Vietnam War. Today, you press a button, it's there.
So you're a part of and from an outsider looking in, a very special group of sisters.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at the history, the beginnings, and in reading the book about and reading some of the letters back and forth, you understand there were trying times for them, but they didn't complain. And just experiencing this past weekend with the heat here, and, I've lived in Florida all my life, but I can't remember heat like the past few days.
Mhm.
So when we think back to the days before air conditioning and just starting everything from scratch when they stepped foot
Right.
over here.
And not speaking the language.
Right, and not speaking the language. You look at that piece of history and you think, wow, there was adversity, there was struggle there. You look at history now and there's still adversity, there's still struggle, there's still those obstacles. It's not that that was tougher than now. And that's the point I really see in these stories of all of you. And I think it's very important in the documentary to bring that out. I look at all of you as superwomen, and you're hiding your red cape. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, you're just an elite, special breed, if you will.
I don't think we see ourselves that way. I think we just see ourselves as, called by God, committed to Him. And our founder back in 1650 said, divide the city and do whatever a woman can do. And I think we still do that. We divide up the people of God and we go out and we use our talents, our education, to do what we as a woman, are capable of doing.
Hold that thought.
No, turn all that fun.
Yeah, no, stop. Yeah, I thought that was a great command, because I don't think when you look at the times and the evolution of women in society, I don't think they would have made that statement 60 years ago. That's
No.
very powerful now to think about anything a woman can do, because we look and think of women in much different ways
Right.
now than men did back then. Does everyone understand the power in that?
I think so. I don't think we proclaim it, but I think we know, that we can, an example would be when I first entered and we were assigned our mission, there was no discernment or talk to you, you're going to do this. And we would be faced with obstacles. For example, I was told I was supposed to teach Spanish to St. Mary's children in Miami, most of whom were Cubans that had just come over, and I'm going to teach them Spanish. I, who had never had a course in Spanish in my life. And I went, okay, this is going to be fun. I guess I was young and naive, or maybe even stupid enough to think, okay, I can do this. Fortunately, God is smarter than I am. And my co-fourth grade teacher came in, and Miss Marin, God rest her soul, she came in and she says, I cannot teach handwriting. If you teach handwriting, I'll teach Spanish. I said, thank you, God. So, God takes care of us. And, I don't know if I would have ever done some things, that I was asked to do, teach second graders first communion, can I did it, under the tutelage of a very experienced second grade teacher, but you do things because you do. But I think that's true of just about everybody.
Has there been an experience or a person or something you've witnessed that's been very inspiring to you in your work?
I think what's the most inspiring for me is to see now grandchildren of students I taught, which makes me a great grandmother, they tell me, of students I taught, and how much they've done, and how much the faith they've kept, and all that they've done, and they'll come back and tell you stories of things you did, and you don't remember at all. You just don't remember, But it made an impact on them, and that's that to me is the crowning joy.
I mean, I can see that because as many of the ones you have influenced, I would make a bet there's multiples of that you never know that
Right.
you've.
And you never know who that person's going to reach. It's a ripple effect, definitely.
Question?
In terms of community, and when you talk about it in terms of community, Can you talk a little bit about the Sisters of St. Augustine's impact, like in terms of the community within the sisters as well as within the city? Having from here, you know, and having gone to school here, can you talk a little bit about the two and how that works?
Just one thing. Okay.
I would say that as a student growing up, what attracted me to the order, because at one time I wanted to be a Dominican, because they wore a white habit. I didn't want to wear black. Was their joy, you know, and they were very joyful people. Not a ha-ha joy, but a very peaceful serenity, you know, that they knew that they were doing the right thing type thing. And that attracted me. I see that in many of our sisters now. I mean, it's an interesting experience living with 21 other women, you know. And, you know, I mean, we have our ups and downs and our own rhythm of events. But as a whole, you know, it's almost like the comradeship of, you know, of the Three Musketeers, you know, one for all and all for one. I think the community at large sees us as maybe an enigma nowadays, not so much when I grew up, but as an enigma, you know, that there are women who actually are still entering the convent, that there are still sisters. We have tons of tourists that pass by all the time, and they'll say, "What is this?" And I'll say, "It's a convent." And they'll go, "Nuns live here, you know, or sisters live here?" And I go, "Yes." And they go, "Oh." And in some cases they'll say, "Oh, I didn't know the Catholic Church still had that." They're not necessarily Catholic, but you know, it's an impact of someone. Actually, one tourist said to me, "It's good to know that someone's praying for us." You know, I mean, and they do see us, and without the veil, with the veil, in and out of a habit, whatever, they spot us. They spot us. I don't know how they do it, but they spot us. You know, I mean, then they'll sit next to me in the airport and, you know, have to tell me their story, and, you know, and it's, you know, and that's, hopefully I'm open to it and, you know, can at least listen if I can't do anything to solve their problems.
So do you find that the habit draws more attention and story and?
Maybe not. I think that the students I teach would be kind of flabbergasted at you know, at a nun in a habit. Although there are sisters here in the diocese that do wear habits, and they're beautiful habits. And you know, if we hadn't changed, I would proudly wear the habit of the Sisters of St. Joseph. And I wore the wool dress serge in the heat of July and August for a couple of years. Although we had much lighter weight for regular every day. Ours was a beautiful habit, but, you know, our founder put the original sisters in widow's garb so they could go out unescorted, you know, because that was what you had to do in France. And so, you know, he puts us in dress of the day to go out and do something.
You mentioned stories, about how people come and tell you their stories.
Mm-hmm.
Through this process, we have sort of realized that the sisters serve as almost, we're not only interested in the stories of the Sisters of St. Joseph, but you're carriers of stories. In some cases, wonderful, wonderful, joyous stories, and others not so much. How do you manage those stories, and how do you share and not share, and know when to share, when something's been shared with you for nothing other than the purpose of share with someone else? How does the theme of stories work within this, work with us, especially as an educator? How does that work with you?
I use a lot of the stories anonymously in teaching. A lot of them, of course, they don't know who these people are. And if I have been missioned with many of these sisters over the years, and sometimes we have former students or former parents or colleagues that, you know, we know, and if I hear a story about them, I will share it with them because I know they wouldn't mind. I think you know when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate. I think that's just part of being a mature adult. You know, that you know, this has to be kept secret and this is okay to share. But I think, you know, I use a lot of what some of my former students have told me in teaching. You know. And then you make them up too.
Anything else?
No, only you like so many of the sisters, exude joy. And we talked a little bit about what made you, when you were a child, happy, and the memories that you remember when you were a child. But now, as a grown-up, or at least if you're willing to admit you're one, that it's the idea of what is it that brings you joy and continued joy that you're looking forward to, you know, even now and in the future.
Oh gosh. I guess because I just know. I know this is what God wants me to do. I mean, I was raised in the faith. The faith tells me that I'm supposed to find the will of God in what I do. And I'm pretty sure I found the will of God in what I'm doing. And that makes me joyful, you know, because, you know, he's going to have to lower the boom on me if he wants me to do something else. It's a little late, I'll tell him.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Great.
Thank you much.
Uh-huh.